So he's got a cunning plan, Mike.
Who has?
Well, I think we're coming on
Jeremy
to
Hunt,
this.
yes. But anyway, we're kicking off with inflation here because the headline figure is 10.1%. That's higher than was expected, in inverted commas, because, who was expecting it to come down faster than it has? So it was 10.4% in February, 10.1% in March. What's the main driver for that? We'll come on to that in a second. Here's what Jeremy Hunt had to say. We have a plan, and if we're going to reduce that pressure on families, this financial pressure, it's absolutely essential we stick to the plan and we see it through so that we have inflation this year, as the Prime Minister has promised.
Yeah. Would I trust this man? No. But if you look at his lapel there, of course, is he supporting UK? Or is it for Ukraine? We just don't know, do we?
We'll both begin with UK, so there you go. But anyway, let's have a look at the UK compared to other countries. So here is the UK at 10.1%, Italy's on 8.2%, Germany 7.8%, France 6.6%, USA 5.3%. So that's sort of the top five there. But so what are the key drivers? Well, the main driver is food prices. And so if we look at this, food and non-alcoholic beverages, 19.2% in March. That's quite an unbelievable statistic, particularly because wholesale prices have been falling. So farmers are not getting what they have been getting for crops and so on for the next year. But nonetheless, they're not getting as much as they had been. But we're not seeing that appearing on retail prices just yet. I wonder why. Because it's the same problem with energy. So energy prices also falling on the wholesale markets, but that is not happening on the retail markets. So this is inflation for household expenses, and the sort of cyan color there is electricity, gas, and other fuels. And you can see they have come down a little bit, but really it's a bit sort of flat, whereas the wholesale price has come down quite a bit. And it seems that some people pretty reluctant to let go of the profits advantage that they have had from the headline inflation figures, it seems.
Yeah, and the blue there giving the big spike for electricity, gas, and other fuels.
Yes, so where does that take us?
Nurses, Debbie, give us an update on what you're seeing in health, whether we've got a health system anymore.
Well, sadly, we don't, of course. But yes, good afternoon, everybody. And of course, I've picked up on the nurses' strikes. The nurses now are announcing that they're going to go on strike again. This is from the 30th of April to the 2nd of May. Now, these are only members of the Royal College of Nursing, because actually Unison, members in Unison have voted to accept the offer. So we've got a division here. And I'm really, really disappointed that our colleagues at the Royal College of Nurses, that you voted this way, because this is unprecedented. It will mean that nurses will be walking out of A&E, they'll be walking out of intensive care, and they'll be walking out of critical care and cancer care. So this is absolutely horrific. And as you know, just as that's happening, we've still got patients waiting for A&E. 10% of A&E patients are waiting more than 12 hours, and in some areas more, and Cornwall and Shropshire being amongst the worst. So whilst you've got all of these patients waiting for A&E, I would just like to reassure everyone that if you want to grab literally grab a jab, your spring booster, then there's plenty of availability if you want a booster. In fact, apparently 320,000 people have already booked. So you can't get into hospital, you can't have your procedures, you can't have your operations, you can't have your treatment, you can't get into A&E, but there's plenty of availability with spring booster vaccination. So I just wanted to highlight that. And of course, while we're at it and while we're on the NHS and strikes, the junior doctors are carrying on their strikes. And it seems, like me, and I'm critical of the members of the Royal College of Nursing. I'm sorry, but it wouldn't have happened on my watch. And likewise, Dr. Malcolm Chamberlain, who's a retired GP from Guernsey, is suggesting that perhaps this is too much, that 35%, which is what they're demanding, it's going to have to be at a price. And what might that price be? Could it be the pension? So here we have an NHS that's in absolute crisis. Already Keir Starmer has announced that the NHS is broken, but he says he's going to fix it. I have a feeling that he can't fix it, but I don't know if you gentlemen have got any comments on the NHS being broken at the moment, but with nurses and doctors both going on strike, how does this leave patients? Obviously in a very dangerous place.
Debbie, certainly agree with that, because patients have simply disappeared out of the consciousness of the NHS, it seems to me. But I want to comment on what we're seeing happen in the NHS, because what comes out to me is that people have been turned against each other. Instead of having medical teams that are all working for the benefit of the patient, we've got senior people, consultants turned against the junior doctors in the NHS. We've got nurses against the doctors. We've got GPs somewhere in the mix. So this is classic. This is a classic plan, in my opinion. How do you just destroy the NHS? You destroy it from the inside, and you turn people against each other. So it's shocking to watch, but this has all been planned for a very long time. This is not accidental decline. This is an orchestrated breakup of the NHS. That's my opinion, at least.
Debbie, I know you're going to come on to private sector involvement in providing cover, NHS care rather, but just want to mention that just literally a couple of minutes before we came on air, somebody sent me through, thanks very much for it, a pamphlet or a leaflet from a doctor's surgery offering guaranteed appointments, 24-hour care, including house visits, if you pay them £100 a month.
Yeah, sadly, I'm hearing of similar stories, and I'm also hearing of people that are changing GPs, and they're actually being asked to sign contracts, and they're not quite sure what are in these contracts. So, and there is plenty of privatization that's seeping in to GP practices, and many GP practices are now called clinical research practices. I need to highlight that, because if your GP practice is a clinical research practice, that means your data will be being used for the academic institutions or universities that they've signed up to. So check who your GP is actually working for and where your data is going. And meanwhile, Rishi Sunak is quite keen to include the private sector. And, he told Conservative Home, you can see the headline there, Sunak backs greater role for private sector in providing NHS care. And he is pushing for more private sector to be included within our health service. And you can see there, we don't need to be part of the EU to be a foreign policy superpower. We are a foreign policy superpower, he said. So I just wanted to see who is being brought into our health system, our primary care health system, that perhaps we haven't heard of. And I discovered a company called Cera, or Cera possibly, I'm not quite sure how they pronounce it, but you can see there that this company, Cera, and I'll tell you a little bit more about them in a minute, but they're trialing an AI voice assistant to reduce hospital admissions. Now, clearly, this is going to be using AI to track people through their symptoms, asking questions. And the CEO, Dr. Ben Maruthapu, I do apologise for the pronunciation there, said an automated phone call could save a call to emergency services, critical when staff burnout and waiting lists are at an all-time high, by monitoring health deterioration through smart machine learning. So here we go again. We have yet another example of how we're going to bypass A&E, bypass hospitals, and use AI. But then Cera do much more than just AI, smartphone applications. And I went to look at the digital healthcare hubs that they're rolling out right across the whole of the UK. And so it's kind of like, it's called a healthcare startup, but they're going to create 15 digital healthcare hubs across the UK to deliver telehealth and medication services, matching the capacity of 1,000 care homes every day. I mean, let that sink in, the capacity of 1,000 care homes every day. And apparently this is going to support older and vulnerable people. £54 million they've received in funding to provide more than 50,000 in-person healthcare visits every day. I mean, this is a big operation, and it doesn't just stop there. Cera are into plenty of other things. I think I've got a couple more slides on Cera where they're rolling out a new platform, this new smart care platform that you can see here. Apparently it's going to save the NHS millions, but my question is, at what cost? So this national rollout apparently comes after this digital input is all put into this one company called Cera. And when I went to look at them, they call themselves a revolutionizing healthcare transformation company, smart digital technology using AI, of course, machine learning. And it's all about delivering care to people at home. So here we go back to the hospital at home with Cera. And then I thought, well, what are their services exactly? What are they actually saying? So not only do they have the app, but they also have these services that they list as receive care in your own home, repeat medications without the trip to the pharmacy, see a qualified nurse on demand, and telehealth consultations at the touch of a button. And it's aimed to reduce hospitalizations by 52%. So you can see that this is exactly the way that hospital at home is starting to evolve. But when I went to look into who Cera have worked with, I was quite shocked to see the array of names. And you can see there Uber, the NHS, the Department of Health and Social Care, Virgin Atlantic, Pill Sorted, and IBM, to name but a few. And when I went to look at the board and who actually control, these are just a couple of characters. There's many, many more. I just highlighted Dr. Ben Marathapu, again, I do apologise, the Chief Executive Officer, because you can see there that he was co-founder and a board member of the NHS Innovation Accelerator. And with Igal Asiman, who's the Chief Commercial Officer, as well as working for many organisations, I just picked up that he was also an Associate Director with AstraZeneca and also a business analyst at McKinsey. And it's extraordinary to know exactly how many times the word AstraZeneca taps up whenever I'm looking and researching into something. They're always appearing in everything. So I just wanted to highlight these companies that are infiltrating our healthcare system, our NHS, taking our NHS logo, but are actually just by stealth, they're there, but who knows that they're there? So keep a watch out for Cera. And if anybody knows anything else, please do let me know.
Debbie, I'll just come in there if I may, because while you were talking, I noticed that we've got linkage through a gentleman called Adrian Blair. He's the Chief Business Officer, formerly CEO of Dext, a global finance technology company. But he was also involved with leadership roles at Google and Spotify. So this is straight back into the mix that we've been watching over many years. Whatever direction you go in, you find that you're coming up against these massive global corporations. And I just find it interesting that these people can start this massive business with no problem at all. The funding comes in, the support from government. How can they do that? Well, they can do it because, of course, the government is helping this whole privatization agenda come into being.
But also huge quantities of so-called venture capital money coming in. But the point I wanted to make here, Debbie, is that, of course, they're saying they want to reduce hospitalizations by 52%. Well, increasingly, we're seeing that the only access to healthcare is through this type of technology. And which category or which demographic is the least likely to be willing to engage or able to engage with this technology? That is the elderly. And of course, we're going to reduce 52% of hospitalizations by simply locking them out of any kind of way to get hospital care.
Yeah, and we know, and I've spoken to Roy Lilly about this hospital at home. And of course, you're right, it is the vulnerable and it is the disabled and it is the elderly, often those groups that have no access to the internet or can't work or operate, aren't tech savvy. So they don't have any access to it at all. And actually, Roy Lilly, as he said, the cost to teach elderly people, some with dementia, but to teach people how to use this technology and to actually provide every single vulnerable person with an iPad and attached to this artificial intelligence and remote nursing is an absolute nightmare, and it's not possible. And he said right from the word go, it's not going to be possible. However, we can clearly see it being rolled out for just those vulnerable types of people, including our elderly. How is somebody with dementia going to operate this kind of technology? They're not. And you're right, it locks everybody out.
Yeah. Thank you for that, Debbie. Well, I'll just add this meme, which actually I came across while I was looking at things to do with Ukraine. So its origin, I believe, is Eastern Europe. For people listening in, I'll describe it. So the first flag we see is the Union Jack, and underneath it, it says, "I need stitches." And then a doctor is saying, "Your appointment is in 43 months. Then we've got the US flag, "I need stitches." And the doctor says your bill will be $67,000. And then we have a Canadian flag and "I need stitches." And the doctor simply says, "Have you considered dying?" And I find it fascinating to see how other people are now looking into the West and what the West is becoming. And they are clearly seeing through the veneer that the Western populations are given.